TheAfrican History Network Show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, November 24th, 2020, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. It's been a very busy day, very busy news day. We see the Dow Jones Industrial Average broke 30,000 points for the first time in history. Donald Trump tried to take credit for it, but no, it's not because of you. It's because you're leaving. It's not because of you. It's because of Joe Biden, and it's because you're leaving. All right. So we have a jam-packed show planned for today. On yesterday's show, on November 23rd show, toward the end of the show, we got the breaking news story that David Dinkins, the first African-American mayor of the city of New York, passed away at age 93. So we're going to talk some about David Dinkins. We talked about it some on our show last night. New York Post had an article about it. They were the first ones, I think, who announced it. So we'll talk some about David Dinkins, the first African-American mayor of the city of New York. And then also there was a good article from newsone.com today and dealing with David Dinkins. We'll talk about that. And Joanne Reed on the Readout paid tribute to David Dinkins as well. So we'll share that with you also. Okay. All right. And then Rudy Giuliani, part of this history dealing with David Dinkins in New York is that Rudy Giuliani was David Dinkins' successor. And Rudy Giuliani David Dinkins became mayor in 1989. And then Rudy Giuliani came after him and Giuliani ran on racism. But then he tried to take credit for a lot of the accomplishments and the seeds that David Dinkins planted, like bringing down the crime rate, for instance. And it reminds us of Donald Trump. Donald Trump tries to take credit for a lot of things that President Obama did and doesn't want to take any responsibility for things that go wrong, like, coronavirus. Okay. But then he popped into a press conference today to try to take credit for the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average going over 30,000. Okay, so, and didn't take any questions. He popped in for a minute. All right, so we'll talk some about David Dinkins. And then a few days ago, we posted an article. We posted a few times dealing with the American Medical Association. The American Medical Association officially recognized racism as a public health threat. The American Medical Association has officially recognized racism as a public health threat, saying that it creates and entrenches health inequality. Now, this is at the same time that we have a global pandemic going on, but also we're hit very hard by this pandemic here in Michigan, here in the U.S. Okay. And African Americans being disproportionately impacted by it. And this is at the same time when Donald Trump's attorney general is in court trying to repeal the entire Affordable Health Care Act. So we're going to talk some about the American Medical Association officially recognizing racism as a public health threat. And this ties into the study that we have talked about that came out in September 2020 from Citigroup Bank. And that study showed how the U.S. economy has lost $16 trillion over the past 20 years, from the year 2000 to the year 2020. The U.S. economy has lost $16 trillion due to racism. Okay. When we look at lost potential wages for African Americans due to lack of a college degree, we look at loss of the loss of value when it comes to home ownership, and African Americans many of them being locked out of owning homes, and then also many African Americans being locked out of getting business loans to start or grow businesses. Okay, so all this is connected. All right, so we'll talk about the American Medical Association, the AMA, officially recognizing racism as a public health threat. And then on our Monday show, Monday, November 23rd, we talked about the Michigan State Board of Canvassers certifying the election results from 83 counties in the state of Michigan, including Wayne County, where Detroit is. Sherrilyn, so then we also talked about the lawsuit that the NAACP has against the Trump campaign as well. Okay, charging violation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Well, on the Rachel Maddow show, Sherrilyn Ifill of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund was interviewed on the Monday, November 23rd, 2020 edition of the Rachel Maddow show on MSNBC. And she was talking about the lawsuit, but she was also talking about the racist dog whistle that's coming from Donald Trump as he attacks the election results and specifically attacks cities that have a high population of African Americans: Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Atlanta. Okay. So we're going to share an excerpt of that interview with you. All right. Well, look, we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, and also on 910 AM Superstation on their Facebook fan page as well. You can listen to the show on your radio, 910 AM on your radio in Detroit. But also you could download the iHeartRadio app. The iHeartRadio app, search for 910 AM Superstation WFDF. You can listen live, and then also search for the African History Network Show, the African History Network Show on iHeart, because we have our own channel there on iHeart, and they have, I think, probably 300 episodes of my show podcasted there. So we have podcasts of this show on iHeartRadio and 8 different other podcast platforms also: iTunes, Castbox, FM Player, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio. All right, so that's what we'll talk about today. Now, on the African History Network Show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network Show. We deal with current events, history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word KEMET, KEMET, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word KEMET, KEMET, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for our email newsletter there as well. You can donate to the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Okay. And at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on the yellow donate button. That really helps out a lot, because we're now here 6 days a week as opposed to 1 day a week. We're doing our show 6 days a week as of October 12th. And we're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. And then also we're still on Sundays. The time slot I've been in for the past 4 years, we're still on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're here 6 days a week instead of 1 day a week. So that definitely helps the donations, helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. And also all of my DVD lectures are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have DVD lectures and digital downloads there. All right. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. I'm going to go to the clip dealing with David Dinkins from Joy Reid, Shakita. So let me know when that's queued up. We're going to go to that clip first. So news1.com has a good article here dealing with David Dinkins. We talked about this on our show last night. David Dinkins was the first African-American mayor of the city of Detroit. New York Post reported this. I think they were the first to report this story yesterday. He died of natural causes at his home in Manhattan, according to NBC New York. His death came about a month after his wife passed away as well. Now, even though he only served a single term in office, Mayor David Dinkins left behind a legacy of decreasing city crime, decreasing city crime, and at a record rate, something that many people often incorrectly ascribed to Rudy Giuliani, who also used stop and frisk as well. Who succeeded David Dinkins in 1993. David Norman Dinkins was his full name. He was born in Trenton, New Jersey on July 10th, 1927. After finishing high school in Trenton, New Jersey, David Dinkins enlisted in the U.S. Marines and ultimately earned a Congressional Gold Medal. David Dinkins went on to enroll in and graduate from Howard University before earning a law degree from Brooklyn Law School. Okay. He was also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Now, we ain't going to hold that against him. Okay. But, you know, I'm just saying, he was also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Now, it was from there that David Dinkins, from Howard University and Brooklyn Law School, was from there that he began to make a name for himself in New York City as part of Harlem's famed Carver Democratic Club, which boasted such legendary members as Basil Patterson, the father of former New York Governor David Patterson, now retired longtime New York Representative Charlie Rangel. And Charlie Rangel actually took over that seat from Adam Clayton Powell. Okay, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. And then, so Charlie Rangel and Percy Sutton, who was Malcolm X's attorney before Malcolm X was assassinated February 21st, 1965. Together, they became known in the city as the Gang of Four, the Gang of Four. These men would go on to top political posts within New York and abroad. Okay. I want to go to this clip here. This is from Joanne Reid, the Readout, MSNBC. Mr. Dinkins, would you please be my mayor? Joanne Reid remembers the life and legacy of David Dinkins. Let's go to this clip.
It started with a riot. As the Cato Institute would later record, it was one of the biggest riots in New York City history. As many as 10,000 demonstrators blocked traffic in downtown Manhattan on September 16, 1992. Reporters and innocent bystanders were violently assaulted by the mob as thousands of dollars in private property was destroyed in multiple acts of vandalism. The protesters stormed up the steps of City Hall, occupying the building. They then streamed onto the Brooklyn Bridge, where they blocked traffic in both directions, jumping on the cars of trapped, terrified motorists. Many of the protesters were carrying guns and openly drinking alcohol. But the uniformed police present did little to stop them. Why? Because the rioters were nearly all white, off-duty NYPD officers. They were participating in a Patrolmen's Benevolent Association demonstration against Mayor David Dinkins' call for a civilian complaint review board and his creation earlier that year of the Mullen Commission, formed to investigate widespread allegations of misconduct within the NYPD. In the center of the mayhem, standing on top of a car, cursing Mayor Dinkins through a bullhorn, was mayoral candidate Rudy Giuliani. Dinkins described the ugly protests the following day during a press conference.
But some of them out there yesterday who were calling out, for instance, why would the people of our communities have confidence that they have the capacity to handle a tense situation in a minority community?
I'm sure that you can guess the ugly racist slur we bleeped out, which was hurled at the sitting mayor of New York. We euphemize it as the N-word. So when that same Rudy Giuliani, whose seemingly singular goal as the next mayor was to undo everything Mayor Dinkins tried to do, particularly when it came to making policing less onerous and less bullying and less deadly for Black New Yorkers, when he offers condolences to Mayor Dinkins, who died peacefully at his home last night at age 93, less than 2 months after the death of his beloved wife, Joyce, you should take that with the same seriousness you give Rudy's legal maneuvers. In fact, if anything, Rudy was the original Donald Trump, the un-Dinkins, just as Trump was the un-Obama, designed as if in a laboratory to put white grievance against an historical Black elected leader into human form. Mr. Dinkins, would you please be my mayor? That is a line from my favorite song by my favorite hip-hop group, A Tribe Called Quest, and he was our mayor, the first Black mayor of New York City, the barber's son, elected in 1990, a year before I graduated from college. Dinkins sought to bring dignity and decency to a New York whose previous mayors, from Fiorello LaGuardia to Ed Koch, had been known for their harshness, and to a city that was being ripped apart down racial and religious lines, with Black, Italian, Jewish, and Korean communities seemingly in a state of constant war. It was the New York City depicted in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing in 1989, the year the Central Park Five lost their liberty for a crime they did not commit. The New York City where the murders of Michael Griffith in 1986 and Yusuf Hawkins, mobs of young white men in 1989, made Bensonhurst and Howard Beach notorious for young Black New Yorkers.
Hey, pause it right there, Shakita. Pause it right there. We have to go to break. Pause it right there, Shakita. Yeah, and just back it up about 20, 30 seconds. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network Show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio, WFDF. I'm Michael Imhotep. 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, how's everybody doing? Okay, so just like Donald Trump tried to take credit for a lot of accomplishments from President Barack Obama, Rudy Giuliani tried to take credit for a lot of things that David Dinkins did. All right, we're going to continue this on the other side of the break. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. African-American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. African-American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Okay. How you doing, Greg? Jeff. Mark. Robert. How's everybody doing? All right, let's see here. All right, so we have a new advertiser. If you want to repair your credit or build a higher FICO score so you can live a better lifestyle, buy that car or house and start that business you've always wanted, be one of the first 10 people to text this number, 419-975-6341, 419-975-6341. Text I'm ready now, Mario. I'm ready now, Mario to 419-975-6341. And you'll get a call back and be able to get started for free. That's right. Be one of the first 10 people to text I'm ready now, Mario to 419-975-6341. And you will get started on the path to better credit for free. Everyone after the 10th caller will be eligible for a scholarship of up to 50% off regular sign-up fees for the next 25 people. Now, the Pink Bakery was just featured on CNBC, okay, NBC's business channel. Have you tasted the world famous No Frowny Brownie yet? If you haven't, what are you waiting for? They are vegan, gluten-free and free of the big 8 allergens. The Pink Bakery is the first Black-owned big 8 allergen-free baking mix company. Visit their website, thepinkbakery.com, thepinkbakery.com, to order their no frowny brownie mix today. All right, email us at customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. African American business owners. Okay, we're coming back from the break here in just a minute. Welcome back to the African History Network Show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, November 24th, 2020. Okay, Tuesday, November 24th, 2020. All right, hope everybody's doing well. So right before the break, we were talking about David Dinkins and former Mayor David Dinkins of the city of New York, first African-American mayor in the city of New York. And he passed away yesterday, age 93, of natural causes. So toward the end of our Monday show, that's when the story broke. We talked about that on our Monday show, November 23rd show. Okay. Right before the break, I was sharing with you a clip from the readout. Joy Reid, MSNBC. Okay. And she was talking about David Dinkins, but she was also talking about Rudy Giuliani, Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who succeeded David Dinkins in 1993, came in on a platform of racism and then tried to take credit for a lot of the things that David Dinkins did. Let's go back to this clip.
But if we valued our lives, Dinkins brought a genuine concern for the poor and the homeless to a city that faced a crisis of both. On the day after famed tennis champion Arthur Ashe announced that he was HIV positive, Dinkins named the city's first coordinator for AIDS policy, Ronald Johnson, who is himself HIV positive. As the virus tore through the gay community nationwide following years of neglect by the Reagan administration, he welcomed a newly freed Nelson Mandela to America in a triumphant visit that drew some 750,000 New Yorkers, including me, as the South African leader's motorcade crossed through Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. In an era when it seemed like the whole world was at war with Black America, from the Nixon-plotted, Reagan-boosted war on drugs to the plague of crack cocaine and violence on our streets that led directly to the 1994 crime bill, to the indifference and cruelty of the police, Dinkins dared to try to make a difference. And we all paid for his brief but hopeful tenure with the first Trump, the original Trump, the Trump named Rudy. There's real problems.
All right. So that was part of the segment from the readout today. So check that out at msnbc.com. The readout. And she also had Reverend Al Sharpton on, who actually was friends with David Dinkins, who gave more insight into David Dinkins and his time as mayor in the city of New York as well. Okay, so after several political appointments in New York, including becoming Manhattan's borough president in 1985, David Dinkins defeated his Republican opponent, Rudolph Giuliani, in the general election following a victory in the Democratic primary that surprised many. Dinkins entered the office amid scandal as the outgoing administration was mired in allegations of corruption. Dinkins thrived in his post, creating the Safe Streets, Safe Cities program that lowered the city's crime rate more than any other time in modern history. But Dinkins doesn't really get the credit for that. The credit goes to Rudy Giuliani. Dinkins also negotiated with the state to dedicate a tax in hiring thousands of police officers. Okay, to dedicate a tax in hiring thousands of police officers. In addition, he helped initiate a plan to keep schools open longer in a bid to keep teenagers off the streets. Dinkins did not win re-election in 1993, losing to Rudy Giuliani, who ran again and defeated him in 93, amid talks by some experts that he failed to connect with Jewish voters. Despite the loss, David Dinkins remained active in politics by endorsing candidates and the like. Dinkins also moved on to humanitarian efforts, such as serving on the board of the Jazz Founders of America, which helped work the elderly jazz and blues musicians. Which helped work with elderly jazz and blues musicians to find them homes and health care. Dinkins' death followed that of his longtime wife, Joyce Dinkins, who passed away October 12th at the age of 89. She and her husband are survived by their 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Okay, so this is a good article by Bruce Wright for newsone.com, and then also NBC News had a good article about David Dinkins as well. The first one, we shared the one from the New York Post on yesterday's show, because the story broke toward the end of yesterday's show. We posted that article from New York Post at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and then we also posted the one from newsone.com at our Facebook fan page as well. All right, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. We're going to also get to the story here dealing with the American Medical Association. I'm going to go to the clip dealing with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and Sherrilyn Ifill in just a second. Shakita, we'll go to that clip next. Let's go quickly to the phone lines. Let's go to Salim. I think it's line 1. Welcome to the African History Network Show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Yes, hello.
Yes, Salim. Welcome to the African History Network Show. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from the ATL.
Okay, from Atlanta. Okay. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Yes. I see Imhotep in your name, so I'm assuming that you're you're a Pan-Africanist.
Didn't you call in here the other night?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for calling.
And I wanted to continue the conversation.
What conversation? What's your question? All right. Thanks for calling. All right. So the NAACP, so we talked about this Monday show and late last week. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund has filed a lawsuit against the Trump campaign. Now, HuffingtonPost.com has an article dealing with this. NAACP Legal Defense Fund filed a federal lawsuit on behalf of Black Michigan voters against President Donald Trump and his campaign on Friday, November 20th, accusing both of violating the voting rights, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Okay. WXYZ Channel 7 in Detroit has an article and a story about this as well. So we shared that on Monday's show. The lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court in Washington argued that Trump is pressuring election officials not to certify votes in Michigan based on false allegations of election fraud in an attempt to suppress votes, particularly those of African-American voters. Now, the fraud allegations have been, quote, consistently debunked, and the campaign's litigation attempts turned away by courts in several states. Sherrilyn Ifill, president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, Inc., said in a statement. Now, they're still trying to file some of these frivolous lawsuits. I think there's going to be another one in Pennsylvania, from what I'm seeing. I think there's going to be one. All these are being thrown out. When they have their press conferences and when they're on Fox News, they allege fraud. When they go to court, that's not what they're alleging. And when you study these cases, so NBCnews.com has an article written by Pete Williams, November 23rd, 2020. Trump's election fight includes over 30 lawsuits is not going well. Trump's election fight includes over 30 lawsuits is not going well. So when they go to court, they don't have evidence to allege fraud, to allege like widespread voter fraud because it doesn't exist. They're lying. So when the judge asked them, are you alleging voter fraud? What's the answer? No, they're not. And they're not presenting any evidence in these cases to claim widespread voter fraud. Now they'll talk about irregularities. They're talking about abnormalities. Most of that are clerical errors. That's different than widespread voter fraud. Okay, that's why these cases just keep getting thrown out. So I want to go to this clip here from this is from the Rachel Maddow show. She interviewed Sherrilyn Ifill of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Let's see here. Racist dog whistle underpins Trump attack on election results. Sherrilyn Ifill explains why the tactics Donald Trump is using to challenge the outcome of the election are more than a means to an end. They encourage a racist narrative for which he should be held to account. Let's go to this clip.
Done and is done systematically and deliberately is to advance a norm in which the votes that are cast in majority Black cities or predominantly Black cities are seen and tainted in some way as being fraudulent or there being something wrong with them. We saw this outside when the canvassers were counting the votes, the day after election in Detroit. And we saw, all of these people standing outside saying, stop the count. And the president had people going back and forth about stop the count, count all the votes. But the places he was targeting, the racist dog whistle was Philadelphia, Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee. I understand that people want to say those are just democratically controlled cities, but I'm not going to pretend that the dog whistle is not what it is, because those of us who do this work have been putting up with the myth of voter fraud targeted in this racialized way for more than a decade. It's never been substantiated, the presence of widespread voter fraud, and yet it's been used as the excuse for all kinds of voter suppression tactics, voter ID laws and purges and so forth, all of which we've had to fight and overcome to try and ensure that Black voters have a right to participate in the political process. So not only is the president announcing the norm that you can scorch the earth, you can have officials stay at the Trump Hotel and drink Dom Perignon after having a private meeting with you at the White House during the period of canvassing, but that you can also hit the low-hanging fruit. You can also call back that canvasser in Wayne County who said that she would accept the other votes in Wayne County, but she wouldn't accept Detroit. It's also the advancing of this racial narrative about voting. I'll say racist narrative about voting that suggests that there is some fraud connected with votes that are cast by majority Black voters in cities around this country. This is so toxic. This is so dangerous. It's also so grotesque. I think about this summer when some of these very same members of Congress, leaders of the Republican Party who have been silent while Mr. Trump has done this, offered these encomiums to John Lewis and purported to understand the sacrifice that he made on the Edmund Pettus Bridge throughout his career. And yet they have stood by and allowed this terrible casting of Black votes with this imprimatur of fraudulence that is so dangerous. And so we think that's part of the reason why we have to pursue this as well. It's important. It's not nothing, and it's not just about the outcome. It's about the full citizenship of Black people, the right to participate in the political process and have our votes cast and counted, and have our votes have the same value as the votes cast by anybody else in our society.
That's exactly right, and so well put. It's about accountability and consequences for these tactics built on the kind of foundation that you're describing.
Okay, so check out that clip from the Rachel Maddow show. That is from Monday, November 23rd, 2020. Name of that clip is Racist Dog Whistle Underpins Trump Attack on Election Results. So that's just an excerpt of the interview. Now, they don't have the full interview on MSNBC's website of the video, but it's in audio podcast format because I listened to the full interview today in preparation for this show. If you go to tunein.com, you know, they have a lot of the shows from MSNBC as well as I think CNN also in audio podcast format. And we're on the African History Network Show. We have a page on TuneIn and the TuneIn radio app, TuneIn. So they have about 300 episodes of the African History Network Show there as well. We're on 9 different podcast platforms. We're on iHeartRadio, Castbox, Stitcher, FM Player, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio, iTunes. But if you go and search for the Rachel Maddow Show at TuneIn, the November 23rd edition, going about 35 minutes into the show, starts the segment with Sherrilyn and Ifill, and they talk about what was going on in Michigan with the Michigan Board of Canvassers. Okay, all right. So check out that clip here. We'll post a link here on the thread of the broadcast. Also, I want to go to I want to go to this next story here. I want to go to this next article here. This ties in with Trump and disenfranchising African American voters, which is very interesting because the article we shared on our Sunday night show is a big article from the Washington Post that dealt with anger that many African American voters were having with Trump because the Trump campaign set up offices in many African American communities trying to win our vote. Then when we didn't vote for him, he tried to disenfranchise our vote. Okay, so you have a lot of African Americans who are upset at this, and those who are older, who understand more about history and understand more about racist dog whistling, they know exactly what they're seeing and hearing. Now, some African Americans who are younger, and especially some who fall for this fool's gold plan that Donald Trump was selling, and fall for a lot of this black conservatism that's being marketed, not legitimate black conservatism, okay, but this nonsense coming from Candace Owens and a lot of these idiots out here who have a very poor understanding of history. So a lot of them are falling for this nonsense, okay? And notice how quiet a lot of these black conservatives are. Notice how quiet they are when Donald Trump is trying to disenfranchise the African American vote. Notice how quiet they are. Now, these are some of the same ones that are trying to convince us to vote for Trump, okay? And at the same time, they're very quiet when he's trying to disenfranchise our votes. But if we look at this article here from NBC News, this is from NBC Black, the NBC Black platform. NBC has a Latino platform, Asian American platform. They also have an NBC Black platform. How Trump's legal battles to overturn the election undermine the black vote. How Trump's legal battles to overturn the election undermine the black vote. Historically, anytime there's been access to the ballot box extended to black voters, there's always been a backlash and an effort to curtail that, said attorney John Cusick, Cusick. So for the Reverend, here's the excerpt of the article. For the Reverend Steve Bland, the day's agenda was dominated by one thing. He drove about 90 miles west from Detroit, where he is the senior pastor of the Liberty Temple Baptist Church. He drove to Lansing, Michigan, with several members of the state's Interfaith Council. Steve Bland stood on the steps of the Capitol complex where the Michigan Board of Canvassers would vote on whether to certify the November general election ballot counts. The group prayed that the board's 4 members, including 2 Republicans, would reject the baseless claims made by Donald Trump. Now, just keep in mind, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, there was only one candidate who encouraged their followers to vote twice, and it wasn't Joe Biden. I mean, let's not have amnesia, okay? Because a lot of these black conservatives running around have amnesia and laryngitis. It was only one candidate that encouraged their followers to vote twice, and it wasn't Joe Biden. Okay, so the group prayed that the board's 4 members, including 2 Republicans, would reject the baseless claims made by Donald Trump and his allies that something was wrong with the ballots cast in Detroit and other cities around the country with large African-American populations. Steve Bland, president of the Region's Council of Baptist Mayors, and other clergy took turns praying that voters in Detroit, where half of the state's African-American population resides, so African Americans are 14% of the Michigan population. Half of the African American population in the state of Michigan resides in Detroit. Okay. Where half of the state's population, black population, resides, would see their legal rights stand, Quote, what we are seeing in the press of activities here in Michigan and around the country, what we have witnessed is a fight to remain in the grips of total white domination, or to accept that black voters and the ballots they cast are every bit as essential and definitive in what this country can and should be as anyone else's. Anything less is not a democracy, but it would be sadly very consistent with the pattern of American history, end quote, Steve Bland said. Now, the day after the election, a clip of Steve Bland went viral. In it, he declared Black Americans had gone from picking cotton to picking presidents. Now, he said that right outside I think he was right outside the TCF Center. He was downtown. And I think when I saw that interview that was done with him, I think he was standing right outside the TCF Center. The TCF Center used to be Cobo Hall. It's a big convention center in downtown Detroit. I live about 4 minutes away from the TCF Center, which used to be Cobo Hall. And this is where the poll workers were counting the votes for Wayne County. Okay. This is where this was taking place before before it had to go to the before the votes had to be certified, they had to be counted. Okay. So it took place at the TCF Center. So in each of the states where the Trump team has challenged the election outcome, or Republican members of boards of election have hesitated to certify results, there has been a consistent theme. The problem areas, the places where they have expressed non-specific wrongdoing and fraud without clear evidence, have significant African-American populations. Now, Philadelphia is 42.3% African-American. Detroit is 78.6%. And nearly 52% of Atlanta residents are African-American as well. The challenges to these votes tap a rich and productive vein, V-E-I-N, a rich and productive vein of voter suppression. Now, as Trump and his supporters continue to lob unsupported claims of voting irregularities and fraud, they appear to be reviving a tradition of African-American voter exclusion in the United States, African-American voter exclusion in the United States. Now, Pastor Stephen Bland said, quote, the question is not, is this a challenge to democracy or Black voting rights, anti-democratic activity, or racism? It is not either or, but both. It's not either or, but both. In the United States of America, you cannot have one without the other. Simply look what has happened in the more distant past and then the last 3 weeks. Now, we see that Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, called Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who is a Trump supporter. Brad Raffensperger is a Republican and a Trump supporter, and Lindsey Graham suggested a series of seemingly race-neutral actions related to election security. Toss out any ballot from an area with a high rate of non-matching signatures, Lindsey Graham said, according to Brad Raffensperger and others on the call. Now, the practice of signature matching is typically used for absentee and mail-in ballots. Election officials will match the signature on the ballot with the voter's registration or other forms for identity verification. Proponents of the signature match process insist that it bolsters election security. Opponents of the signature match process, they argue against signature match policies. Their argument against signature matching policies is that African-American voters have long been more likely than other voters to see their ballots rejected. So had Georgia followed Senator Lindsey Graham's request and refused to count any ballot from an area with an unusual number of signature match problems, the move would have almost certainly have nullified votes cast in areas with large African-American and Latino voters or new citizens, groups which Trump did not carry. Read the rest of this article here. This is a really good article. This just came out November 24th. Janelle Ross and Janelle Griffith for NBC Black. How Trump's legal battles to overturn the election undermine the black vote. Okay, we'll post this link here. And then I want to go to this last story. So I saw this article back on November 17th. We posted this article on our Facebook fan page from Business Insider and also yourblackworld.net as well. The American Medical Association officially recognized racism as a public health threat. The American Medical Association officially recognized racism as a public health threat, saying it creates and entrenches health inequality. So the AMA has officially defined racism as a public health threat that has created substantial health inequality. Racism, both systemic and structural, has historically perpetuated health inequality and cut short the lives of many African Americans, indigenous people, and people of color in the or non-white people, Hispanics, Asian Americans, etc., in the U.S. and around the world. Now, over the last year, a number of county and state authorities have also labeled racism as a public health threat. Over the last year, a number of county and state authorities have also labeled racism as a public health threat. Among them are county councils in San Bernardino, California, and Montgomery, Maryland, as well as authorities in Michigan, Nevada, Cleveland, Denver, and Indianapolis. Now, Willarda Edwards, Willarda, Willarda Edwards, who is a board member of the American Medical Association, said in a statement, quote, "The AMA recognizes that racism negatively impacts and exacerbates health inequities among historically marginalized communities, Quote, without systemic and structural level change, health inequities will continue to exist and the overall health of the nation will suffer." Now, Dr. Jessica Shepard, who is an African-American OBGYN in Dallas, told Business Insider that the American Medical Association's move is critical to address racial disparities in healthcare from the top down. She said, quote, "We fail to realize that there are so many things that occur at the systemic part of healthcare that if we don't make changes such as the one we're discussing now, then we'll never really get to the heart of the problem. Now, so check out this article here, but I want to give an update quickly on coronavirus. Nearly 2,100 dead of COVID-19 in the U.S. on Tuesday, November 24th, deadliest day since early summer. So Tuesday was the deadliest day in the coronavirus pandemic for the U.S. since early summer, which is a troubling sign that the worst is still on the horizon. Okay, the country reported nearly 2,100 COVID-19 deaths on Tuesday, according to data tracked and analyzed by the Washington Post. It's the highest mark since May 6, 2020, when states reported a combined 2,611 virus fatalities. Now, you had about 3 million people who traveled Thursday, Friday, and Saturday this past weekend, about 3 million people who traveled through TSA. In CNN.com, there's a big article on this also. We posted one from pbs.org. We have seen so far 20 straight days of 100,000 or more COVID-19 cases. 20 straight days of 100,000 or more COVID-19 cases. We know that deaths come about 3 weeks or so after you have spikes in the number of cases. Now, the CDC is finalizing guidance to shorten the length of time it recommends that people self-quarantine after potential exposure to coronavirus to encourage more people to comply, two agency officials said on Tuesday. Americans are weighing their Thanksgiving options this week as COVID-19 patients overwhelm hospitals, and the number of newly discovered cases per day is more than double what it was during the summer surge. State and local leaders are responding with short stay-at-home orders and hard limits on the number of people who can gather. The federal government, let's see here. We also saw the Dow Jones Industrial Average broke 30,000 a day for the first time as well, because the GSA signed off on the transition to the Biden administration. That was on Monday. Okay. Then also Michigan Board of Canvassers certified the votes, and they vote 3-0 because Norm Schinkel abstained. So that helped boost things as well. So the stock market, whether you're talking about the Dow Jones Industrial Average, NASDAQ, or New York Stock Exchange, it is forward looking. Okay. You still have millions of people unemployed because of coronavirus. You have exorbitant, you have a large number of people who are in food lines, things like this. There's going to be a massive number of evictions. Unless there's a coronavirus bill coming soon, there's going to be a massive number of evictions and foreclosures on the other side of this. And we know more deaths are coming. But the stock market, people will say, well, how could you have all this taking place? We're seeing, like in Texas, miles long lines of cars, miles long, waiting to get food, waiting to get a turkey or something like that. So the stock market is forward looking. It's not looking at what's going on today. It's looking at what's coming in the future. So with Joe Biden coming, they're knowing that there's going to be more stability. Okay. Check out the updates from the Washington Post dealing with coronavirus. They have some really good updates here. Also, NBCnews.com and New York Times, they have good updates as well. Back to this article, and let me see how much time we have left in the show. Shakita. So Dr. Jessica Shepard said, we fail to realize that there are so many things that occur at the systemic part of healthcare that if we don't make changes such as the one we're discussing now, then we'll never really get to the heart of the problem. Now, still, there's a lot more work to be done. Dr. Jose Terradas, an emergency medicine physician who has worked extensively with Spanish-speaking and low-income populations told Business Insider, quote, meaningful impact happens when words become action. Meaningful impact happens when words become action. Our asymmetric approach to public health and the distribution of resources has taken form over decades, and change won't happen overnight. Now, we know that coronavirus disproportionately affects non-white people, especially African Americans, who are at least twice as likely to die from coronavirus. African Americans and Hispanic Americans are dying in greater numbers than any other ethnic group. And according to an analysis from the New York Times, are 3 times more likely to catch coronavirus and twice as likely to die than white Americans. All right, so that's going to do it for us here. We're going to continue this for a little while longer on our social media platforms. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. You can also donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App and paypal.me/the AHN Show. Remember, right now is correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Greg Davis and then Michael Baisden. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Okay, let's continue. All right, African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network as well. Okay, we can get you up and running. Most likely tomorrow, get you up and running. All right, we're going to post a link to this article here from businessinsider.com. And this ties into the study from Citigroup Bank back in September that deals with how racism has cost the U.S. economy $16 trillion over the past 20 years, from the year 2000 to the year 2020. Okay. Now, reports from early April, back to the article about the American Medical Association, reports from early April showed that African Americans had so far made up 39% of deaths, COVID-19 deaths in Chicago, 42% of COVID-19 deaths in Illinois as a whole, and 40% in Michigan. Now, in Michigan, African Americans are 14% of the population. Okay. But back in April, we made up 40% of the COVID-19 deaths and 81% of the COVID-19 deaths in Wisconsin's Milwaukee County. Okay, so the question is asked, why is racism and not biology? Why is it racism that's driving up rates of pre-existing conditions among people of color and not biology? Okay, what's behind that? So African Americans and Hispanics and Native Americans tend to have health conditions that make them statistically more susceptible to infectious diseases. They tend to statistically be more, they tend to have health conditions that make them statistically more susceptible to infectious diseases. But that's not simply genetics. It's also access to health care, access to fresh food, and exposure to dangerous environments as well. So there are a number of contributing factors. Now, Dr. Kamara Jones, C-A-M-A-R-A, Dr. Kamara Jones, said we have to make sure that people understand that race is not biology. We have to make sure that people understand that race is not biology. And Dr. Kamara Jones is an epidemiologist and physician with affiliations at Morehouse College and Emory College and Harvard University. Quote, this false narrative of biologically based differences in the races, okay, it has been debunked. Now, studies have also found that African Americans in the U.S. are less likely to seek medical help for ailments, for illnesses. That's influenced by the historically racist American health system, which, for example, allowed African American men to die, go blind, and experience other severe health effects from untreated syphilis as part of the infamous Tuskegee experiment, which a lot of people misunderstand because the contrary to popular belief, because I see people circulating memes about the Tuskegee experiment. The Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis in a Negro male did not inject the men with syphilis. There were 600 African American men in the study. 399 of them had an early form of syphilis called latent syphilis, Latent, latent syphilis. They already had it. They were denied treatment. The 201 men in the study did not have syphilis. They were the control group. When you understand science experiments, you have one group that you subject the stimuli to or that you alter. You have the other group, the control group, that is not altered, so you could compare the differences. So there were 201 men in the study who did not have syphilis. There are 399 who had an early form of syphilis called latent syphilis, and they were never told that they had syphilis. Treatment was denied to them. They were given placebos like sugar pills, things like this. Even when penicillin became the treatment for the prescribed treatment for syphilis, they were denied penicillin as well. So that study was supposed to last. It was administered by the U.S. Public Health Services Administration, and it was supposed to last between 6 to 9 months. Ended up lasting for 40 years. I've done a whole presentation dealing with the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. Okay, so reluctance to seek medical care is often influenced by the fact that non-white people or people of color are underrepresented in the medical community, which affects patient care. Also, Dr. Jessica Shepard said, many times we have seen that communication can differ. Many times we have seen that communication can differ, and placing people in the community who look like them can have great impact on outcomes. One study found that African American babies are 3 times as likely to die as white babies when cared for by white doctors. Okay, African American babies, one study found that African American babies are 3 times as likely to die as white babies when they are cared for by white doctors. Another study found that African American men who had an African American doctor received more effective care. USA Today, we posted the article from USA Today dealing with the study of African American babies, and there was Stephanie Rule on MSNBC did an interview. She did a segment on her show on MSNBC. Comes on 9 a.m. Stephanie Rule, and she did a segment with some African American doctors, female doctors, talking about this. Okay, and dealing with they talk some about the article from USA Today. I'm going to see if I can find that article here. We'll post the link. Let me see. I posted it on our social media platforms. I want to give you the name of it. See if I can pull this up. But once again, so this shows how racism impacts the health of African Americans on life expectancy, etc. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism has nothing to do with not liking people or calling people racial epithets. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Okay. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to opportunity, jobs, healthcare, media, education, etc. And they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is what racism is. Okay, racism is not calling people the N-word and things like this. That's bigotry. Racism is something much deeper. It's a power structure. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. All right, so the name of our article, Black babies are more likely to survive when cared for by Black doctors, study finds. Black babies are more likely to survive when cared for by Black doctors, study finds. That's the one from USA Today. A number of news outlets picked up this study. We're going to post a link here on the thread of the broadcast. Let me look at CNN has the article as well. They have that story also. ScienceNews.org, Black Enterprise. Let's pull this up here from Black Enterprise. BlackEnterprise.com. Let's look at this here. Newborns more likely to with black doctors. Let's see here. According to thehill.com, the study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of, let me close this out. More likely to African American babies are more likely to die in a hospital than, okay, this is freezing up. Check out this article here from, yeah, too many pop-ups. Check out this article here from blackenterprise.com. Okay, they had too many pop-ups. Black newborns. Hold on. Look at the one from USA Today. Black babies are more likely to survive when cared for by Black study finds. Okay. Black babies are more likely to survive when cared for by Black doctor study finds. All right. So if we go back to the one from businessinsider.com, so Dr. Taradas said that rather than overt racism, racial disparities in access to health care is the threat to public health. Racial disparities in access to health care is the threat to public health. When he worked in a low-income California county, for example, there were far fewer clinics and much longer waits in his training location in an affluent corner of New York. Okay. When he worked in a low-income California county, there were far fewer clinics and much longer waits than his training location in an affluent corner of New York. He's with insurance, health insurance. Many people in the U.S. have to wait weeks or months to get health care, but it's even more pronounced in poorer areas. Now, studies have found that African Americans receive different types of treatment. African Americans receive different types of healthcare treatment as well. Systemic racism plays out in other ways too. To this, Black people are less likely to get the same treatment in terms of pain medication. They're more likely to wait longer in the ER. They're less likely to be taken seriously. It's a holdover from the days of slavery, said Dr. Jennifer Lincoln, an OBGYN. She said this on a video on TikTok in response to the death of Nicole Thea, Thea, Nicole Thea, who is a London-based social media star who died on July 11th, 2020, along with her unborn child at 8 months pregnant. Okay, Dr. Jennifer Lincoln said, Black people are less likely to get the same treatment in terms of pain medication, which is historic. A lot of this dates back to slavery and the misbelief that African Americans had, or African people in general had, higher thresholds of pain tolerance, or may not feel pain. And then with giving pain medication, there was a fear that giving African people pain medication may make them impervious to being shot, etc. Or what type of side effect would they have if they're on pain medication? Okay, would it give them more strength? Would it give African American men more strength, make them impervious to being shot, etc.? Okay, so and this blackdoctor.org has an article dealing with this, and there was a study that was done with medical school students, and it talked about how many medical school students thought that you did not have to give African American patients the same amount of pain medication that you had to give white patients, because they thought African American patients had higher thresholds for pain. All these types of stereotypes. Okay. So Black people are less likely to get the same treatment in terms of pain medication. They're more likely to wait longer in the ER. They're less likely to be taken seriously. It's a holdover from the days of slavery, said Dr. Jennifer Lincoln. Now, she highlighted a study showing that 50% of doctors and residents surveyed falsely believed African Americans experience pain differently than white people. 50% of doctors and residents surveyed falsely believed that African Americans experience pain differently than white people, leading to inappropriate treatment. Okay, so when people say, oh, well, racism is just in the past, that was back in slavery days. Okay, if our Monday show from November 23rd, we talked about how Donald Trump does not want to sign off on the National Defense Authorization, okay, which is the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. He doesn't want to sign off on that because there's a clause in that bill change the names of military bases named after Confederate soldiers and Confederate, quote unquote, Confederate heroes. He doesn't want to sign off on that. All right. And I played the clip from the Golden Girls from 1988. Don Cheadle was on the Golden Girls, and it's that episode was about the Confederate flag and controversy over the Confederate flag, and how Blanche Devereaux, who's from the South, how that flag was like part of her family, and she connected that flag to like her family members. Okay, so you're dealing with understanding social engineering and how all these types of stereotypes and how what we've been taught are part of a system of racism. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. All this is connected. Okay. So check out the rest of this article here from businessinsider.com. Businessinsider.com. The American Medical Association officially recognized racism as a public health threat, saying it creates and entrenches health inequality. All right. So here you have us 155 years after chattel slavery ended, 155 years after the Civil War ended, still fighting over these Confederate monuments because of misinformation, miseducation, and because of racism as well. Okay. And as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Nellie Fuller correctly taught us, if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. Everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. All right. So, hey, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. And African American business owners, email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. All right. That's going to do it for us. So for Thanksgiving, I think I may do a special broadcast dealing with the real history of Thanksgiving. And when I teach on the real history of Thanksgiving, is from the perspective of Native Americans, the Wampanoag tribe, the Wampanoag Nation of Native Americans. So I think I may do that Thursday, because the 9:10 a.m. the Superstation is closed for Thanksgiving. They're just re-airing previously recorded episodes. And then we're back on 9:10 live on Friday. Okay. So I think I may do that, my presentation dealing with the real history of Thanksgiving. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.